Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KGO9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon.
Jason, how are you? Dressed nicely in your polo today. I was in a polo last week. You were in a tie. We've reversed roles.
On a couple stories, and here in Tucson, we're up above 100 degrees again. So
yeah,
we got the polo.
It's fall.
Hey, we got a little bit of a different poll question this week here on the Huddle, a little historical kind of question based on a book or two I saw out. Who is the greatest Arizona football player of all time? So go to KGO9.com and go to the viewer poll section and vote. And already we're kind of getting some interesting comments like, where's Chuck Cecil, which is a very valid question. The five are Art Lupino, Ricky Hundley, Teddy Bruschi, Tedero McMillan, and Rob Gronkowski. But Pat, I think really a big part of it is, okay, are you evaluating them based on how they did in Arizona or the total body of work? Because in that case, it makes a big difference with somebody like Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, certainly. But the question is, who is the greatest Arizona football player of all time? It's not who is the greatest football player who played college football at Arizona. Then you might put Teddy Bruschi or Rob Gronkowski. So to me, it's who's the best football player as an Arizona Wildcat. And I think, you know, and you and I have talked that Art Lupino is, just a legendary football player, but a different era. He's on the list, but I didn't pick him. I actually, if you want me to tell you who I picked, I picked Ricky Hundley. I've seen all of these guys play with the exception of Art Lupino. And Ricky Hundley, to me, was the greatest college linebacker I ever saw in person, and probably the greatest Arizona Wildcat I ever saw in person as well. I think that you could make the case for Chuck Cecil. Teddy Bruschi was a great player here, but he became an even better pro. Rob Gronkowski became a way better pro than he was a college player. And I mean, we can.
He was hurt.
What's that?
He was hurt. He was a fantastic player.
There's no question. Yeah. So he had limited ability. I think what stands, Art Lupino is the Cactus Comet, 1954, 1955. He led the NCAA in rushing. That is an amazing feat to do that 2 years in a row. What stands out for me for Ricky Hundley is consensus All-American in 1982, unanimous All-American in 1983, and first ever U of A Wildcat to be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. So to me, you add all that up, and there's a lot of evidence that shows that he was an awesome college football player, and I think the best at the U of A.
I might agree with you there, but Rob Gronkowski, the best pro, definitely.
Could be, yeah.
You're right. The best pro. And I had a little fun there with T-Mac. Certainly incomplete, right? He's only had 2 years and just starting his third year. So a little incomplete there with Tedero McMillan. Put him up there for fun. If you want to make a comment and in the comments section who you think is, and if you think I should have included Chuck Cecil, that's fantastic. We'll show the results of our poll question a little bit later here in the show. This is Arizona football heads to number 10 Utah, coming off the bye week after the loss to Kansas State. Pat, they made Keon Burnett available today. He was the tight end who we thought would have a big breakout season, right? But only 3 catches so far this season. Second generation Wildcat. Apparently, we find out today he's been banged up a little bit, but and that's maybe why he hasn't been as involved in the offense. But here's somebody who I'd really like to see them get going at Utah this Saturday.
But it's that little bit of insight that you get every once in a while that you're not aware of. You're not privy to all the things that are going on. And it makes sense that maybe he was slowed a little bit by injury. But you're right. He has got to be more involved because you've got a player in Burnett who's, the kind of player that's tough to defend, right? Because you're already putting so much emphasis on Tedero McMillan, and you're already putting so much emphasis on what's been a little hit or miss, but a fairly good running game when the running game's going for the U of A, it's something you have to pay attention to. You certainly have to pay attention to T-Mac. So a guy like Keon Burnett is a guy that could be a difference maker in a game or two. And I hope that maybe he's feeling a little bit better. There's no time like the present because it's not going to be easy going to Utah.
Offensive coordinator Dino Baber is saying that he hopes that he sees what we see from Burnett this Saturday is the same player who we saw in August. So was music to my ears today. Noah Fafita had a couple uncles who went to Utah, threw his first touchdown pass at Utah 2 years ago.
Right.
It was in garbage time, though, in a 45-20 loss. So Utah's, I looked it up, they're about 20th in the nation in defense. They're 10th overall ranked in the country, so I thought that might be higher in defense because that's what they're known for, right? But they're 20th in 20th overall in defense, and even in rushing was 4.35 yards a game. It wasn't quite as dominant as I thought, and certainly the big question at quarterback, is it going to be Cam Rising or
right,
Isaac
right.
Wilson?
And we find out that Cam Rising, we thought he was going to play last week. He didn't end up playing last week, and there's a little bit of question as to what lies ahead now for Cam Rising. He's obviously a veteran quarterback. He's older than about half of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now,
He's
and he's only in college,
something like
yeah.
that.
So there's no question that Cam Rising can get the job done. But will he even be on the field? So we'll have to see.
But this guy, Isaac Wilson, went into Oklahoma State and came away with a win. So,
and
obviously
he did
he's
some
no
nice
slouch
things.
either.
Yeah, he did some nice things. But he's not Cam Rising at Cam Rising's best. But clearly,
he's bound to make a freshman mistake. That's what you're going to try to, try to get him to do.
Yeah, and he comes from
Utah's first 3 games.
Yeah,
31
and he comes from a family of quarterbacks, obviously. Yeah, family of quarterbacks, so he knows what he's doing. But it's just a difference. It's just a difference in quarterbacks for sure. I think that'll dictate a lot of what we see on the field on Saturday. We'll have to see. Yeah, you there, Jason? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Arizona as a 12.5-point underdog. Yeah, I lost you for a quick second there.
Okay. 12.5-point underdog, and Utah ranked 10th, as we've been talking about, Jason, as your screen's freezing up a little bit there. But the Arizona Wildcats have had some struggles against Utah in the past. In fact, the Wildcats have a losing record, 26-2 against the Utah. And the Utes right now, as Jason mentioned, number 10 in the country. Still not a lot of people believing that they're going to be the team at the top of the standings once the end of the Big 12 season ends up. But this will be Arizona's first official Big 12 football game, because remember that K-State game, because it was actually scheduled before the University of Arizona joined the Big 12, it did not count and does not count in the Big 12 standing. So Arizona comes in at 2-1, but 0-0 in the Big 12, while Utah is 4-0 and 1-0 in the Big 12 already with that win over Oklahoma State. And I was surprised, honestly, by that win over Oklahoma State. I was definitely surprised. I thought that Oklahoma State was the better of those two teams, but as that game played out, Utah was the better team. They come away with the win. Jason mentioned Utah defensively being one of the top teams. There's Jason back. I was just mentioning how I was surprised that Oklahoma State, I thought they were going to be the better team. And I thought in Stillwater, I thought they would win that game, but Utah surprised me, Jason.
Yeah, no, they're saying today in the news conference that they expect Kansas State and Utah to be the top of the class, top of the heap in the Big 12, and that's who Arizona plays for their first 2 games.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it'll be Arizona and Utah this Saturday night. Pat, there was some other football news today that kind of stopped me on my tracks a little bit.
Yeah,
and that was the Brett Favre news that he recently has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and I had a couple of thoughts right away on that. The first is, you think about, obviously the blows to the head he had, and I actually remember one that was so bad. It was when he was playing for Minnesota in the playoffs. And I remember just a terrible concussion that he had.
Right.
And I said, oh, gee whiz, you hope he kind of retires off that. The fact that he played so long and there's a difference between how many concussions were reported and how many he actually had. And then, of course, when you hear Parkinson's and you think of head injuries, you think back to Muhammad Ali and what happened to him as he went forward in his life.
A couple things stick out to me, and he said in the past that he might have had 1,000 concussions. Now all of them weren't major concussions, but the point is you get.
I don't know if it's 1,000 concussions, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had hundreds of hits to the head of some sort.
Yeah, and as we know through the
from
study
the Steelers linemen, they took their toll.
Yes, they do, and it's not always the big blows, although the big blows are really crucial, and they contribute even more so. But it's the constant blows that really do it. I looked this up, Jason. A single concussion increases your chances of Parkinson's disease by 57%. That's just a single concussion. So they know there's a direct correlation between concussions and your risk at getting Parkinson's disease, which is just an awful disease. I had a grandfather pass away from Parkinson's, so I know what that can do. And he clearly was not a professional football player. It was just a man who got Parkinson's disease. So I feel for Brett Favre. It's got to be really take a toll emotionally, mentally on you when you get that kind of a diagnosis, Jason.
Yeah, and then the other thought I had was I don't want to hear any more of fans complaining that they're too soft on the quarterbacks with the roughing the passer, the hit on the unsportsmanlike call that was made against the defender against Kyler Murray this past week. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You want to keep tackle football, okay? These guys are too big and they're too strong. And unless you want to have flag football, you've got to evolve here. Yeah. And they're evolving the sport away from the gladiator sport that it was to the offensive and what you see here. And they have to do that, or else there's not going to be a league, and they're going to deal with all the lawsuits and everything and the concussions and kind of going forward. If you want to keep it the mainstream sport that it is, you have to make these changes. I don't want to hear anybody complain about these roughing the passer, late hits on the quarterback. You find a way. You do not have to keep going. And you could tell, when a guy's letting up, go like this. You can let up. If the defensive lineman's not purposely letting up, I'm for throw the flag.
Yeah. A couple things, one, Brett Favre was testifying before Congress, and that's when we learned about the Parkinson's disease. He's also talked about, he's a big proponent of not even allowing anybody to play tackle football till 14. And I'm sure he's a proponent of these rules. Now, what I have seen is a lot more of these guys wearing the soft cushioning on their helmets. I'd love to see that just become a requirement instead of you're on your own if you want to do it, but you don't look very macho if you're wearing a big puffy thing on your helmet out of practice. So I'm talking about even in games. I think that.
Yeah, but you know what you do? You look smart.
That's right. I agree. That's what you do. I agree. I think that's the way the game needs to evolve. Is the safety has to come first. I think you and I both don't ever want to see tackle football go away, but there's got to be ways that you can make it safer. And I think they're working towards that. I think the big study on CTE is opened some eyes and opened the league's eyes, and they're at least now open to that idea of making some changes, and certainly the rule changes. I saw something the other day, Jason, on one of the social media sites. I don't remember which one, probably Instagram, and it was basically it was the CBS NFL Today Open from the 1980s sometime,
Oh, I know all about it. Yeah.
And it was and like all these, and every single hit they showed is illegal now and would have drawn you suspensions and fines. And it was like, 45 seconds of an open that was just brutal. And you understand why. And you mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers linemen, and it's true. These guys' lives were shortened because of this, and a lot of them are now paying the price, or have, and their families have paid the price. And I just feel awful for Brett Favre. Whether you loved him or didn't like him or hated him as a player, he's a human being that's now and his family is gonna have to deal with. And don't forget, he got scammed out of a whole bunch of money where he was putting money into what he thought was a company that was designing some kind of drugs and treatment to help with people to avoid getting CTE from repeated concussions. And he got scammed out of a bunch of his money. It's just awful.
I think you'll see that story on the national news tonight, his revelation of Parkinson's disease. Yeah, that CBS morning show, the pregame show with Brett Musburger and Jimmy the Greek, big part of my childhood for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, when I came here to K-Gun Pat, we had an animation where helmets were colliding, and we took that. I took that out
Oh, yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
That's from yesteryear.
Yeah.
You can't have that. So while we're on the NFL, I had another thought too about the Cardinals. I've watched most of their first few games. They're 1-2. A lot of excitement around Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver. He's a terrific player. And there seems to be a buzz, every time he catches the ball, the fans go nuts, because this guy, is he going to be as good as his dad or Larry Fitzgerald? And, how good is he? I think we need to he was nervous the first game, the first throw to him, he dropped, and he's come back and he's had some catches. He's a terrific player. He can get open. He's good when the play breaks down and then he finds a space and tries to get open for Kyler Murray. I think he's a fantastic player and will be a fantastic player. But he's not the type of receiver where Kyler Murray can just throw it up there and trust him to come down with it. He's not that big, and I don't think that's his game. And we saw it with an interception where Kyler Murray just threw it up there.
Right.
And afterwards, Kyler Murray was like, hey, you at least try to knock it down or play defense. But I don't think he's you could do that maybe with DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't think you can do that with this receiver. I think he's just a little bit of a different style player, terrific player. He's just not that type of player.
Well, he's certainly, he's a rookie, so he's got to kind of play his way into being an NFL player because you'd make that jump. I know he played at Ohio State. I know that he played against top-notch competition, Big Ten, and then on the national stage with playoff games, all that kind of stuff. But it's a different level, Jason, as you know. All of a sudden, the guy that's lining up against you, well, they have him on you for a reason. Because he's probably getting the best defensive back on every team. And they played some good teams so far, and they're 1-2. Played the Bills really well, actually. Should have won that game, probably. But anyway, this is a guy who's got to learn how to find a way to get open. You have to find a way to get open. You're right. He's not got the frame that's going to say, just throw it up to me. Kyler, just throw it up to me. I'm going to go up and make that play, because the defensive backs have the ability to go up and make that play too. He doesn't have he's not Megatron or anything like that. He's not so big.
I'm not trying to knock him. That's just not his game, I don't think.
Right. But I think he will, because of his pedigree. I mean, because of, being the son of one of the greats, that he'll get the right coaching. He'll get it figured out. I think he's going to be a terrific player, but you're right. He's not necessarily, going to come out of the chute right away and you go, oh my God, he's the greatest wide receiver I've ever seen. He's just, he's got a little ways to go.
Yeah, he creates a little buzz in the stadium, which is fun for the games for sure.
Well, they've had a lot of buzz this year, and because they're playing a little bit. Kyler Murray's healthy.
He's playing terrific.
Yeah, he is, and as long as he's healthy and they get a little bit of blocking for him, he'll be fine. But as soon as any of that starts to go, then it reverts back to, unfortunately, what we've seen the last couple of years when things, they have little slides of games where you're just like, oh, that's not a very good football team.
All right, let's finish it up with our Huddle poll question. Who's the greatest University of Arizona football player of all time? All right. We got a lot more votes on this one, Pat. So this definitely stirred up some emotions from here. A lot of people with Gronk, and I think what that is just, as we talked about before, it's a little bit of recency bias and also a little bit of on what he did as
right. You're breaking up a little.
He had in the NFL.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit there, Jason. But yeah, we got what you're saying is are you letting it sneak in a little bit that he was, a Super Bowl icon along with Tom Brady, Teddy Bruschi, again, also terrific player here. Don't get me wrong, but he also had a great NFL career, and that added to it. Art Lupino never even injuries didn't allow him. Ricky Hundley. Had some injury problems, and maybe his game just didn't translate into the NFL as well as it did in college. T-Mac, this jury's still out. T-Mac might get some more votes if we did this poll in 5 years, Jason, when he's
we have some younger people.
Yeah.
We're some younger people.
Wally Wildcat has a good one, because we mentioned Chuck Cecil, but we haven't mentioned Nick Foles. Wally Wildcat says, what about Nick Foles? He still holds the passing record, I think. And Nick Foles, but maybe it was just a too short a time here as well. Maybe not he certainly wasn't a consensus or unanimous All-American like Ricky Hundley was.
Yeah. Foles had an interesting NFL career, some highs and some lows for sure.
You
Yeah.
can't
By
get
the
any
way, I'm told
higher.
our Twitter version, there's a Twitter version of the poll out apparently with Ricky Hundley getting a little bit more than 9%. So yeah, I actually watched him a little recently. There was on the NFL Network. I think the Broncos in one of their Super Bowls were playing, and he was, I think he was on that team after he was done with the Raiders. So
Yeah.
yeah.
He played well at times, Ricky Hundley, I'm talking about, in the NFL. His career just didn't last all that long. When you think of a guy like a Teddy Bruschi, for instance, that played a lot longer. So maybe he isn't as big a household name all these years later in the NFL, but he certainly is around here.
For sure. All right. And you can still.
Yeah, we're having problems with Jason freezing up here. He's saying you can still vote. Of course, go to kegon9.com. You can use the QR code there on your screen. So continue to vote, and we'll see if those numbers end up changing at all as the poll question goes on throughout the week. We check back every once in a while to see what those poll questions are doing.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. For Pat, I'm Jason, and we'll see you next week at the same time.